Good afternoon. My name is Everett Hernandez Ventura, and today I will be talking to you about the famous illusion that is the prodigal son. So, before we begin, there's one definition that you guys must know in order for us to actually understand what we're going to be talking about today. What does prodigal mean? Prodigal, according to Google, and I'm looking at the second definition, is a person who leaves home and behaves recklessly, but later makes a repentant return. Now, there's one phrase in this entire definition that I want you guys to solidify in your heads, and I want you guys to forever remember this. The main point of the prodigal son is recklessness, or reckless and later repentant. So you do something dumb and you go later say, I am sorry. You are repenting for what you are doing. Now, where does this originate? As we know, there are different types of illusions. For example, you have mythological, you have historical, but in this case, this illusion is biblical, specifically in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 to 32. Now, what is the story behind this? Well, this story, unlike if you've heard rags to riches, it's the exact opposite. It's from riches to rags. So, there was a father who had two sons, and these two sons worked on the fields of his father. One day, one of the sons decided that he wanted to have his inheritance. And the father was a little bit skeptical, but eventually he ended up giving that inheritance to his son after his son kept on pleading for it. Once his son got his inheritance, he left home. And when he left home, he spent all of his money. He went to buy all the lavish things that he could afford. He wanted to invite as many, he wanted to go buy as much stuff as he could without even thinking. He was being reckless in that one moment. And what happened? After spending all of his money, he eventually went broke. He went poor and he couldn't afford anything. So he started searching for jobs, and the only job that he could find was feeding pigs. And it got to the point where he was so poor that he couldn't afford even food, that he had to eat the food that the pigs ate. Can you imagine that? Having to eat the same food that pigs eat since you cannot afford anything. You're going from a lavish lifestyle to this lifestyle where you have to work because you just have nothing anymore. So what happens? The son, who is repenting for what he did, he decides that he's going to return home and ask his father for forgiveness. On his way home, he starts planning this whole speech that he's going to give to his father. And what happens? As he's coming home, his dad sees him from a distance. Now, what has his dad been doing? His dad has been waiting for his son to return home. And upon seeing him, this dad, he runs outside and go finds and hugs his son. And he went to go hug his son, even though his son was smelly, even though his son had torn clothes, even though his son was just disgusting in general. And this father went and hugged his own son. And his son said, Father, I am sorry. I have sinned against God, and I have sinned against you. Please take me as one of your workers. But what did the father do? The father was happy. He didn't care that his son had left. He was just happy to have his son home. And what did this father do? He said, give him the best clothing, find the biggest calf or cow that you can find, and kill it so we can all eat and we can all have this big party. The father was happy to have his son home. And the son was just happy that the father was able to forgive him for all the bad stuff that he had caused him, for all the pain that he had caused him. What is the function or the big idea that I'm trying to bring across at this point? It's a reminder that anyone can be forgiven, and I mean anyone can be forgiven. And even though it may be tough, it is still something we must always remember, that anybody can be forgiven. And there's this one quote by Brian Stevenson, who I believe embodies this idea the best. Each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. So think about the worst thing you've ever done, and I want you to realize that you are better than that. Just like the son had gone through his worst phase of spending all this money, and eventually hitting rock bottom, his father didn't see him as that worst thing. His father saw him as something better, as his own son. Now, examples in literature. I think this is one of the most famous ones that we can apply the prodigal son to. The line, "The Witch in the Wardrobe." To make a long story short, there are four siblings who walk into a closet and they find this whole new world. And in this world, there's a good king who is a lion, and then there's a evil queen who is a witch. Now, one of these siblings named Edmund, he secretly allies himself with the evil witch, and he starts betraying his family and the good king by telling the evil queen the plans that they have in order to combat the evil queen. Now, once Edmund realizes that the queen is truly evil, he goes back to his siblings and he goes back to the good king, who is the lion, and he starts asking for forgiveness for betraying them in that manner. Now, what happens? Well, you guessed it. His siblings and the lion, or the king, they end up forgiving him, even though Edmund betrayed them by allying himself with the evil witch. Now, the activity that I want you guys to do in order for this to truly cement in your heads, I want you, the person watching this, and I don't know who it is, but I want you watching this to find your parents and tell them you're sorry. Now, what you're going to be sorry for, I don't know. What you do, I don't know. I just want you to find your parents and say you're sorry for something reckless that you may have done and you haven't said sorry for. I think that's the best way that you can understand what the prodigal son means. I know that there's something reckless that you've done, so you cannot tell me otherwise. So I want you to find your parents and I want you to say you're sorry. And I want you to actually do it. Don't just type, I'm done. I want you to actually find your parents and I want you to say that you are sorry. This has been my presentation on the illusion of the prodigal son. I hope that you have learned something and I hope that you truly understand this illusion so that next time you are reading or just watching anything, you can be on the lookout for this illusion and that way you can easily recognize it. Thank you.